what this elect remnant view is arguing is the first half of Romans 11 and the second half of Romans 11 are making the same argument. Where I'm going to say the second half of Romans 11 actually advances to the third stage in the argument. So I laid out those 3 steps at the beginning. The elect remnant view only sees 2 steps, not 3. But what they, I think, rightly understand that the second half of Romans 11 contributes to their view is the means of how Israel is saved. So they, I think, rightly understand, and this is really important for the passage as a whole. So I'm not arguing against them. I'm finding common ground.
Yeah.
That what Paul lays out in verses 11 and following, and really all through these verses, all the way through to verse 32, is over and over again, he lays out this 3-stage process of how Jews and Gentiles relate to each other. So it emphasizes that, yes, he just pivoting off what we just read, right? The spirit of stupor has come on Israel. So
Yeah.
Israel has been rejected. So Israel's sin, their disobedience, their rejection, their hardening, whatever language you want to use. So I'll just say Israel's rejection will actually lead to the Gentile salvation, which in turn will lead to Israel's salvation. And he cites here, pivoting back from chapter 10, he introduces this category. Chapter 10, verse 19, he's quoting Deuteronomy 32, this kind of provocation to jealousy motif. And the argument he's making is that this is kind of blows our mind, but what he's saying is the way Israel is going to be saved is I'm going to first harden them. And because they're hardened, I'm going to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. And so the Gentiles are going to be the main ones coming into the
Yeah.
Messianic kingdom. And the Jews are going to look at the Gentiles being saved and be jealous of that, and then be provoked to jealousy by the Gentile salvation, and then want to emulate their faith. And then therefore they come into the kingdom. So they believe. And so that 3-stage process, Israel's rejection, Gentile salvation, Israel's salvation, happens in that order. That interdependent mercy of God, right? And so
Yeah.
what God is showing here is that there's actually kind of a redemptive historical twist, right? Like what most Jews expected at the time is that Israel be saved first, then the Gentiles, right? To the Jew first, then the Gentile. And that's what made sense. That's what Jews expected coming out of the Old Testament. But now here's Paul, right? So think of the context of Romans. Here's Paul. We're a couple decades into the church, right? The first couple decades, wow, like think about the day
Yeah.
of Pentecost. They're all Jews, thousands of Jews getting saved. Like, whoa, yeah, it's happening. And all of a sudden now we're a couple decades in. He's sitting here in the Church of Rome. And he's looking around, and it's all Gentiles.
Yeah.
Where are all the
Yeah.
Jews? So like I thought all the Jews we could save first, then the gospel go to the Gentiles. And what Paul's saying is actually the pattern, what God has ordained to happen is that Israel be rejected first. There's a saved remnant, but the majority of Israel is going to be rejected. That's going to lead to Gentile salvation. Then that's going to lead to Israel's salvation. And this elect remnant view argues that's going to keep happening as a repeated historical pattern throughout the church age. So it's always a minority of Jews being saved. This elect remnant happened through this. And so I find a lot of sympathy in recognizing that, yes, Paul is arguing for this elect remnant theme. It is based on God's purpose and election. There is this kind of reversal of expectations, this salvation historical twist in how God's going to save Israel. And it is true that there is a partial hardening, and that I do think that Jews are being saved in the present age, but the majority of them aren't, and they're recognizing that. And so in that sense, we're agreeing, but I'm saying that I think there's a reversal of that hardening, right? The rest that were hardened back in chapter 7 or chapter 11, verse 7, the rest are hardened. The remainder, God's not done with them. There's something more to come. There's a future reality that is not a future reality that's different than the present reality.